Alrighty, so round one of fuck's this tournament called? Bloodsport at the Pink versing Mr. Matt Moricelli.
Yeah, close enough.
I got it right, isn't it?
You got it right this time. Close enough.
Yes. And he's playing his Sisters of Battle and Imperial Guard. Is that right?
Oh, it's Sisters of Beyblade, but yeah.
Look, mate, Imperial Guard.
Sisters, yeah, sure.
And it's very nicely painted. I'm obviously, focusing on the sexy things. I've got my Hive Tyrants, not my Hive Tyrants, my Tyranids.
Do you want to start again there?
No, mate, I'm very professional, you see. So all hiding here, lots of things in reserve. All that in reserve. And I'm playing only one Hive Tyrant and a mix of units, so I want to see what happens. Alright. Alrighty, so as you saw from the very professional introduction, I'm playing at the Lords of War tournament. This is run by Pat Carter and Josh McGowan. New series of tournaments, trying to get the scene much more healthy in Brisbane. So we'll just jump into the setup portion of the game while I start talking. So for this tournament, because I'm doing a lot of prep for ETC, so that's the European Team Championships, I'm just playing as many different units as I can. Trying out warriors, Tyrannofexes, all the different types of things in the Tyranid book. You would have seen my CanCon list. I still think it's one of the stronger types of Tyranid lists. But like the last couple of tournaments, I've been playing Simon Weekly's, or a variant of the multi-Hive Tyrant Warlock list. It is definitely strong, but I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of it. So I'm just trying to see what other type of gaps I can do to fill out. Is there any interesting bits and pieces that I've missed? So the next few weeks, actually the next couple of, or maybe a month and a half, I'll be playing a lot more Carnifex heavy lists. Definitely the next tournament in like 2 weeks time, so hopefully I'll have that video up there if you're interested in seeing Carnifexes in action. Alright, so for the deployment, you would have seen Matt. He deployed and then he used all his Dominion doodads to scout forward. He gave me first turn, and I think it was the correct decision. But he could have gone first and been just as good. It just would have meant that he was spread out a bit more, maybe allowing me to pick off some stuff. My first turn, I push forward. I do a double slingshot with I do a slingshot with the Swarm Lord and Gene Stealers. I push forward, and I'm locking his his emulators all in combat. I declare a charge against Saint Celestine and a unit of scouts. So I don't actually declare charge against any of those vehicles, but I pile in and surround them, not letting them do an overwatch, but also stopping them from doing some shooting that in the next turn. Because having so many flamers really, really hurts, and Gene Stealers, they're tough, but they're not that tough. I drop in his back line with a huge drop of Jawmonger. So using the Raveners as the main tunnel, 6 warriors and 20 Devil Gaunts and 1 lone guy, we'll call him Bob, as well as a Hive Tyrant dropping back there. And the main concept of this list is pretty much having a strong midfield, not deploying a whole bunch. So you have, I think it's like 7 or 8 things in reserve. You get to see where the majority of their deployment's going to be. You can deploy with a couple of Biovores, some of your shooting, the Tyrannofex kind of anchoring one portion of it, making sure you put your objectives in smart positions, and then I was going to say not playing cagey, just having a backfield, having a midfield, and having an aggressive dive forward. So this is probably the most balanced type of Tyranid list I can think of. It doesn't spam anything. The most it has is 3 Biovores. But I've only got, we'll call Swarm Lord the Hive Tyrant. So we've got 2 Hive Tyrants, 1 flying, 1 on the ground. We have lots of different troops represented, and we can play pretty much every phase of the game. And we've got answers for quite a number of things. One thing that Tyranids in general have a weakness against, unless you have some of the long-range shooting or you have Genestealer cults, is large tanks, so like a Shadow Sword or a Baneblade or something like that. Because they can overwatch multiple times, even if you do engage in combat, because they can shoot even when they're engaged, it's just really hard to kind of negate them. And it doesn't matter if, like, I was giving it -1 to hit almost all the time. It doesn't make too much of a difference. You know, you pay 1 CP, you give it +1 to hit, then you be aggressive. So Matt was very clever with it, being really aggressive, paying 1 CP, so you're hitting on 2s or whatever in combat as well. And just every turn, shooting everything, killing a whole bunch, charging with it, killing another whole bunch. And just every turn, just always hurting both in combat and in shooting. That was Adam doing a nice little sign. As you can see, Adam, it did work. 30 seconds is all it takes. Anyway, so by turn 3, it was starting to look really good for Matt. He was starting to get a lot of the pressure away. Even though I was locked in combat against his tanks pretty much from turn 1 onwards, the Baneblade answers just so many questions. And Saint Celestine being able to swing twice, so even though I killed her once, I didn't manage to kill her a second time. She along with the Baneblade is the backbone of Matt's army. Everything else there is just to soak wounds, be annoying. Sisters of Battle with the invulnerable saves across the board and 3-up armor saves. Doesn't matter if they're toughness 3, they soak up a lot of damage. He has Storm Bolters on all of his dominions, so that is a lot of firepower that comes out. And apologies, I forgot again, and I'll try not to do it for next tournament, to take photos of everyone's list, so apologies for that, guys. But you would have seen it's Immolators, Dominions, Big Tank, and Saint Celestine. That's pretty much the bulk of the list. I got a couple of Seraphim, like a company commander with the Aquila thing. So he had lots of CP. By turn 2, he had more CP than what he started the game with, and he was using 2 or 3 every turn. So it's a little nutso. I got down to 1 Biovore before the game ended, so I didn't get tabled, but I had 1 bottle left, so it was quite unfortunate. But it was still a fun game, and Matt did, in my opinion, everything right.
Alrighty, round 2 at Lord of War, versing Dan. I haven't played him before, and he hasn't. What did you say? 6 years you haven't played.
6 years, haven't played for 6 years.
Excellent. So we're playing Eldar, lots of Reapers, but everything's Ulfway as opposed to Alatok. Sorry about the zoom. I don't know what's going on here.
See if it fixes up. No.
Anyway.
Nice tank.
So lots of Reapers, lots of Doodars, and we've got Eldrad and co. So I've spread out across the board here. Got a nice ice table. Lots of Genestealers back there.
Alrighty, so game 2, yeah, as I said in my intro, Dan hadn't played in 6 years, and I think this was his game 2 of the tournament, but game 2 in those 6 years. So there was a few things that he could definitely have improved for the future, especially being a bit more defensive with some of his Reapers and co. Because he started charging forward with his Reapers, and they didn't have any screens or anything like that. So not necessarily the best thing he could have done from there from a protection point of view, but it was still fun nevertheless. And I was helping him out with some of the stats of his army, because as you guys know, I play Eldar as well, and things like the Reaper Exarch having, say, 2 wounds and being able to reroll ones just innately, even without guide and things like that. So there was a few things I was helping him out. So hopefully he went on to have a better tournament. Better games in the tournament. His target priority could also have been improved a little bit. He was leaving, he was splitting up a little bit more than he probably should have. But as we went through the game, I was kind of talking him through some of the things. For this game, my main goal, I actually deployed my Genestealers, and then I don't know if I actually did a double move or not with the Swarmlord. I think I did, just to get a bit more distance. But there was a big gap, right in the middle of his army. You can see where I'm deploying everything, and so I had kind of his army already surrounded just from the big drop, my push forward with my Genestealers, and I gave up the right hand side because I didn't really need anything there, and all I lost was what's it called, 1 Biovore. So my backfield became my pushed up along the back towards the right hand side. On my midfield became the aggressive portion of it, so you can see that big bundle of joy right on his side of the table, and my aggressive portion, which is the Genestealers and the Swarmlord, went off to the side to clear up the Reapers, and also so Eldrad and co, and a whole bunch of Die Avengers were in that Wave Serpent. So I've got kind of 3 mini games playing at the same time. I've got a backfield, I've got a forward field, and a side field, if you want to call it that. And that's pretty much what how the game went. The 3 different, we'll call them 3 mini armies, were independent. They all had their own source of synapse. They could all do their own problem solving in essence. And they all supported each other where needed. So there was a bit of melee components in all 3 portions of the army. There was some big heavy hitters, there was some big monsters. So you can see how the balance, what I was talking about a balanced Tyranid list. Each component of the army, all 3 components in essence, self-contained. Sure, the Genestealer component doesn't have any shooting, but it's very, very quick. And once it's cleared what it's meant to be clearing or doing, it can then rejoin with the shooting portion of the army. The shooting portion of the army does have some sort of melee component of it, and can support the Genestealers when needed because they've got the range. So they all kind of work together. You would have probably seen in the last game, I'm testing out just doing the intro videos with my tablet rather than just my old camera. Hopefully it's okay. For some reason the zoom was going really wonky just before. Look, if you guys got some feedback on any component of it, like last time, not showing the list was some of the feedback, and I of course forget again. But if you have any other feedback for the formatting or what you're looking for from the intro or anything like that, let me know. Otherwise, I think from a gameplay point of view, this really helps my game. It helps capture movement. It helps capture kind of where the objectives are, what I'm trying to achieve, and it lets me pick out overarching mistakes, or we'll call them strategic mistakes. Like, was deploying my midfield presence in his backfield the correct choice or not? Was there large gaps that he could my opponent could capitalize on? So you saw in the first game, I dropped in his backfield with my midfield, and once Matt cleared that up, he could then just push straight in and eventually table me. And I'm sure part of his army really helped him with that. But I have to ask myself, was that the right spot to drop them? Was it better to drop it in the midfield to support the Genestealers? Something to think about. So this game ends, I think we called on turn 3, not because we ran out of time, it's just because it was, as Dan said, it looks like you've cleared, like I clear Eldrad, I clear all of his backfield, and now I've got, I think it's like 1.5 Wave Serpents left to kill.
Alrighty, game 3, versing Eldar, Mr. Dave. We've got the fluffy Alatok.
And here's my deployment. So a lot of the layouts for all the tables are very similar, but lots of line of sight blocking, but not from the side. And all my reserves. So game 3, versing Flemo. I haven't played him in a while actually, and so it was interesting seeing this kind of mixed, what's it called, like a mixed Eldar list, not focusing on just Reapers or just Shining Spears or anything like that. Sure, he has got one big unit of them, and he has one big unit of Reapers, but he's also got Fire Dragons, he's got a Crimson Hunter, a couple of Wave Serpents, he's got a, what's it called, the Wraith Lord, and one Fire Prism. So, you know, nice good mix. He's got a bunch of Rangers as well to push forward in capping objectives. He got first turn and took it. I didn't try and seize, and a lot of his firepower just straight into the terrain effects, and brought it down quite easily. Actually, I say quite easily, but a lot of firepower had to go into that. You know, a whole bunch of Reapers and the Fire Prism and the Crimson Hunter all went into it. My turn, I pounce, I drop the midfield in the midfield, looking to shoot everything I can and clear out the Rangers. Dave, he pops the 6-up to hit stratagem. So 1 CP negates quite a lot of my damage. But I mean, I've got, what was it, like 60 shots on my what's called Devourers, and I do get, I think it was about 11 hits, which converted to about 8 wounds. Because I've got the Warlord trait, the Jormungandr Warlord trait actually is really interesting and really cool. In case you've never actually seen it, it means that, because my Prime is my Warlord, all units that are Jormungandr within 6 inches ignore cover. And that really helped against Rangers. So even though I was hitting on 6s, Dave's saving on 5s because the cover component of the Rangers were negated just through my Warlord trait. However, to get what I was trying to do, and I didn't really protect my my Tyranid Prime. You'll see in a second, he dives in with his Crimson Hunter and nukes the crap out of my Prime and gets Warlord. Something I didn't cover fully, and this is just a bit of an advanced melee tactics, I guess. And this is something else that Nick Nalavati covered pretty good in his the Brown Magic website. I did my double move with the Genestealers, so I move and then move again, and I pay the CP to double my advance, etc. I declare a charge against his Shining Spears, so that's an important thing. Shining Spears only get the bonus to damage when they're charging, or bonus to strength or whatever it is. So I charged the Shining Spears. I didn't declare on his Rangers though, and so his Rangers in the top left-hand corner. I charged towards them, but I didn't actually declare a charge against them. And what I did is using that, and then I spent 3 CPT swing again. I managed to surround completely, so at 3 points of contact, like a little triangle, 2 separate Rangers, so that the Rangers couldn't actually fall back. So if you only need 3 models to do this, but you go as like a triangle, and you surround a 25mm model with a 25mm base, you can make it so that a unit can't fall back whatsoever. And as long as you don't declare a charge, you don't have to swing. He can swing back, sure, but I didn't swing. And so while I charged the Shining Spears and I killed them all, I was still counted as in combat, and he couldn't fall back because I was surrounding one of his Rangers. In his turn, he charged with a whole bunch of characters, and killed a bunch of my Genestealers. I killed his Rangers, and I think like 1 or 2 of his characters, and then in my turn, I look to finish off the characters, touch the Fire Prism, just so it has to move. So the Fire Prism when it moves, it's -1 to hit as long as I mean it's got crush targeting matrix. So, but if it's trying to shoot some of the big guys, it's got -1 to hit. And if it doesn't move, if it moves under half speed, it gets to fire twice. But really, you're just trying to touch it, get it in combat, so it has to move because you don't want it hitting at full BS, and you want it to kind of keep moving around if it's trying to achieve anything. And that's pretty much what the rest of this game is. I'm looking to. I'm pretty much just ignoring all of the wave serpents. I'm ignoring his vehicles, and all I'm doing is clearing out and eating, in essence, eating all the reapers. You know, eating all the fire dragons, eating all the little stuff that's going to score objectives. Because I've got OBSEC. I'm holding objectives, and this was an objective mission.
Alrighty, day 2, mission 4, versing Mr. Murph. And we've got lots of big robots and a little bit of hive tyrants, and we're playing a new one of the chapter approved missions, the roving patrol. And so we're all kind of coming in piecemeal.
You place 1 within 6 of the center line, and then you place 2.
I haven't played this mission before, so this will be interesting.
Away from the center.
This game against Murph was definitely the funnest one for the whole weekend. It was all about positioning, delaying my opponent in his side of the board while trying to score some objectives and really survive until the end of the game. So you'll see most of my focus in this game, while I'm waiting for all my reserves to appear, is just keeping Murph on his side of the board. Knights and Custodes, I'm not going to do necessarily that well against them. And so I'm dropping, you know, one unit, the unit of Devil Gaunts and Raveners, getting as many wounds as I can onto one of his Custode dudes, dropping in a Morlock, getting a couple of mortal wounds happening. And then you can see I drop my other Morlock behind the wall on my side of the board. And the whole aim here is really just to drip feed Murph some units and keep him on his side of the board as long as possible. Now Murph, when he's coming on the board, he's using, even though he's only got like a 1-inch charge, he's using any extra distance to get a little bit closer to my side of the board. And he played it absolutely right. He's doing what he needs to do. He knows he has to slowly get to my side of the board, but he can't just go, you know, headlong to me, because it leaves then the ability for him then to turn around and go back and clear stuff on his backfield will be negated / take too long, and then he won't have anything at the end of the game. So while I'm trying to delay him as long as possible, he's doing everything in his power to not be delayed as long as possible, if you understand what I'm trying to say here. So yeah, that's pretty much the game. This is all about movement. Our luck, for both of us, we said it was equal. That, you know, we had good luck and we had bad luck. Luck didn't have that much to do in this game. The list itself, so Knights are going to be a bit more tough with a NID list like this. It's not Genestealer Cult Genestealers, where I can go Strength 5 with my banner and send in a huge unit of Genestealers and try and actually get some damage through into his Knights. Because Strength 5 compared to Strength 4 is so much different when you're hitting Toughness 8 units. And it's really why I'm thinking Genestealer Cult Genestealers with that banner is the best way to play Genestealers. I really do like the double sling, like this slingshotting, sending the Tyranny Genestealers and like especially Kraken, 48 to 50 inches in a turn. I love that. But when you get there, other than locking them in combat, it's so disheartening, you know, bouncing completely off. You know, you've got 4 attacks each, and you know, neg 4 on the 6 to wound, but you're only wounding on 6s, so you get like 5 wounds in. Doesn't matter how many attacks you got, you know, and there's no way to really re-roll that unless you get a Broodlord.
and they're a bit more expensive than the Patriarch, and their abilities, the psychic abilities, are just not as good or not as interesting when you compare them to, say, a Hive Tyrant. And if you're going to take a Hive Tyrant, well, you might as well take a Hive Tyrant with the Monstrous Rending Claws. Your damage output's going to be more. So I'm talking down the the problem with a balanced list, and don't get me wrong, I really do enjoy having balanced Tyranid lists or any lists, and trying to work out how do I win through movement, how do I win through superior gameplay, versus I'm just spamming X, Y, Z of a unit because it's the most optimized of the choices. The game. This is now, I think, turn 3, maybe turn 4. No, it's turn 4. As you see the big dice there, and he's finally hit my back lines. He's locked my Tyrannofex in combat. My Tyrannofex did in Overwatch cause quite a bit of damage to one of his knights. The acid spray, double shooting acid spray, is pretty good. I think it's only neg 1, or might be neg 2. Neg 1, strength 7 neg 1 is great. D3 damage each is great. But I was always saying to myself, I wish I could move half speed and shoot twice. So either moving only 6 and shooting once, or standing still and shooting twice, I think is a real limitation of our version of a Leman Russ, which is the Tyrannofex, compared to, say, Astral Militarum or whatever. So I'm not the biggest fan of a Tyrannofex. It was cool, and running as Jawmonger is definitely a really fun way of doing it. But I've definitely learned that for what it's trying to achieve, zoned and area denial, great. But not being able to move, if you want to keep the damage output, really, really sucks. And you can't advance with him. I mean, you can if you do an onslaught on him, but it's not guaranteed. But you can't advance and shoot because it's a heavy weapon. Even though it auto hits, it counts as heavy. So it's not even like a flamer where you can advance and shoot and ignoring negative modifiers. So very sad about that. Murph's Knight finally drops here. I've killed 2 out of 3 of his Custodes, but the third one, he was down to 2 wounds. It was his Warlord, but he had Feline Pain on it, and it was just... Murph was pumping some CP into him and making sure that he's saving with his rerolls and things like that. Finally kill a Knight. He rolls a 6 on the explosion and almost kills my Swarm Lord and the Morlock that's right next to him. The main thing I'm trying to do is the Knight that's on the top left-hand corner, which is on my side of the board. I'm always casting Horror on him. I'm negating as much damage as I can coming out of that Knight. But Murph... So right now, Murph's last chance is to kill the Swarm Lord. So if the game ends right now and that Swarm Lord stays alive, I win. Unfortunately for me, he just manages to kill the Swarm Lord, which is a 5-point swing back to Murph, and he wins the game 3 points more than me for a 12-8 win. It was the funnest game of the weekend and very, very close.
Alright, last round, versing Mr. Adam. Down from Melbourne with a bunch of his other friends. He's an upside down fuck, and because he doesn't give 2 shits. And so we got, is there any dudes? Oh yeah, there's a bunch of dudes underneath there. So there's Black Templar list with a bunch of reserves. And we're playing Dawn of War and some interesting type missions. Pour it around there, we'll see what happens.
He's running a defensive style Space Marine list, but it's Black Templar. So if this was Ultramarines, I think I'd be even more worried, I guess, just because I've been playing against Eric and his defensive style Ultramarines list, and yeah, I've been struggling. However, this one he doesn't have the counter punch that I'm worried about. So Eric's running Assault Centurions inside his Land Raider, and it's a bit harder to kind of push in. Whereas Adam, he's just got like his version of Chapter Master. I think it's Grimolas or whatever his name is, and a few characters. He doesn't really have like this big unit that's really tough to kill when I do get to his back line. And rather than using Eric Lathyrus is one of my friends. He runs the Dreadnoughts, so the Daka Dreads. And with the Ultramarines, they can fall back and shoot. Whereas when I finally got into combat with his Adam's Preds, they couldn't shoot anymore. Like, you just touch them and then I'm negating a lot of damage, whereas you can't achieve the same against Ultramarines. I think Adam's game plan was smart. He got first turn, he gave it to me. He deploys very defensively. I'm pushing forward. But what he got, because this mission was all about you draw 3 cards and you have to try and score him that turn. And so he got objective 5, which was worth, I think, like 3 or 4 cards for Adam. And he dropped in, you see, a single character. It's a Terminator character. And that was my decision to go for it with my Tyranids. My Genestealers. So I had them in their little nodes. I spawned them in the back left-hand corner. I double moved them with Swarmlord. I did my double advance. I assaulted, I killed that Terminator captain guy. I forgot to use the stratagem to get D3 stratagem, so that was a little mistake on me. But I did use the stratagem, I think it's called Overrun, where instead of consolidating, you can do another complete move. And so I did another move with the same advance. And then I could have, but I didn't. I could have activated for another 3 CP another fight phase and lock his Land Raider in combat. So in my turn, summoning from a node, I moved. I think it was like 48 inches or 46 inches. No, I needed 48, but I could have done that through another activation of a combat phase. But you can just see how crazy the Genestealers can get in terms of movement with the Swarmlord. So I really, really like and appreciate that fact. And that's something that I will make sure I pay attention to in my games against Genestealers. And Adam definitely, he didn't know about the Overrun stratagem. And I've only used it once in a game before. This was the second time I've ever used it, and the first time in a tournament. But it can be a really interesting stratagem to use when someone's trying to screen like that. And this is just something to note while I'm doing my next turn's movement. Something to note is you're not always expected to know everything about your opponent's list, and sometimes like if someone, I won't say springs, but if someone does something, especially because there's so many stratagems and so many different books, if someone does something that you weren't kind of expecting, it's okay to learn from that and not think that they were holding necessarily anything against you, because there's just otherwise the preliminary portion of the game would just take too long. You feel free, like you ask questions. I never hold back from my opponent saying, I can do this and this and this. But if I was going to go through the entire game plan of what I was going to achieve, well, not even just that, just literally listing every single stratagem I could potentially use, it would just take too long. So, not that my Adam did this, but just don't get salty if someone does something that you weren't expecting and you didn't ask. Because that's part of the learning process. The more games you play, the more you learn. Someone springs something on you, all right, cool. You learn from that and you move on. My turn 2. So when I did that turn of the Genestealers, you would have seen I spread out with my second move all across Adam's side of the board. And the main thing I was trying to do was area denial. So in his army, I covered it a little bit in the intro. He's got some Stern Guard dropping in. He's got some other units of Space Marines in his 2 drop pods, and I was just trying to prevent any area for him except for the top left-hand corner where the water bottle is, and the side right-hand corner, side of the right, where the other drop pod landed. That was the only two places on the entire board that he could actually drop. He couldn't drop in his backfield. He couldn't drop on anywhere on my side of the board, just because of where spore mines were, where the Morlocks were, and really it was all about area denial. And this game was very, very fun in that it showcased. I mean, Adam was still doing a lot of damage to me, but it showcased the maneuverability and the speed that Tyranids can do and can achieve. And it's not all about how much damage you can do. So, like, using Dakka Flyrants, definitely a lot of damage that comes from them. Lots of maneuverability, but you can achieve that with swarms of Genesteals and the Termagants, and just using different combinations of units.